90% of America's fresh tomatoes don't come from local farms, they come from Mexico. That's more than $3 billion worth of produce crossing the southern border every year until now. On July 14, 2025, Washington dropped a policy bombshell, a 17% tariff on every tomato truck rolling in from Mexico. No buildup, no debate, no grace period. Just an official statement and an overnight price shock. Within weeks, produce sections across the U.S. felt the hit. In Raleigh, North Carolina, prices shot up more than 40%. At one grocery store, a shopper picked up a tomato, checked the tag, and quietly put it back. Restaurants pulled salsa from menus. School cafeterias served pale, tomato-free salads. Shoppers everywhere were left asking, what just happened? This wasn't simply an agricultural adjustment, it was a geopolitical statement. And it started with the termination of the 2019 Tomato Suspension Agreement, a trade deal that for years kept prices steady and disputes manageable. That agreement was the safety net that stopped trade spats from spiraling into chaos. This time, there was no negotiation table, no compromise, no countdown. According to Axios and ABC News, even shipments already on the highway were taxed the moment they hit the U.S. border. Importers called it an ambush. Economists warned it could rattle food inflation. Grocery chains called it a disaster. By the 2-month mark, tomato prices nationwide had surged, and the ripple effects were everywhere, from backyard barbecues to fast food chains. What started as a quiet policy change has now turned the humble tomato into a political flashpoint. And if tariffs stick, America's salad bowl might never look or taste the same again. Between 30% and 45%, that's how sharply tomato prices have jumped in America's biggest cities. In Raleigh, a pound of beefsteak tomatoes leapt from $2.99 to $4.35 almost overnight. In Los Angeles, Roma tomatoes that once sold for under $1 now sit above $3.80 for working families. This isn't just inflation, it's a cut straight to the dinner table. School lunches quietly dropped fresh salads. Fast food chains swapped homemade salsa for processed paste. In suburban kitchens, tomato sauce got watered down, stretched for just one more meal. But the real impact went far beyond grocery aisles. In Florida, dozens of small, Latino-owned import businesses collapsed within weeks. Without the cash to survive the sudden price spike, they shut their doors. Hundreds of warehouse staff, truck drivers, and cross-border coordinators, many of them with decades in the trade, were laid off with nothing more than a severance slip and a locked gate. Even experts didn't see this coming. Yes, policy changes were expected, but a 17% tariff slapped on overnight, with no public hearings or transition plan, that caught the industry off guard. A July 2025 MarketWatch report warned the damage wouldn't stop at tomatoes. Packaging companies, refrigeration suppliers, and trucking firms tied to produce imports could all feel the blow, pushing up food costs everywhere. Washington's reasoning was blunt: protect American farmers. But critics ask, protect who exactly? Florida's tomato fields only run part of the year, and northern states like New York barely produce enough to compete. One sudden decision didn't just change trade policy, it rewrote the rules of the North American dinner plate. And the question now is, how far will the fallout spread? Illinois, Minnesota, and much of the northern U.S. depend almost entirely on imported tomatoes to keep shelves stocked. California, once a tomato powerhouse, has seen output sink for over a decade, hit hard by drought and labor shortages. That's why a question now hangs over every grocery receipt. Is this tariff really about farming, or is it about politics? Mexico didn't try to climb over America's new trade wall. It went around it. No speeches, no threats, no public drama, just planning, engineering, and execution. Within 90 days, a brand new export corridor came online, far from U.S. borders. Trains now roll daily from Baguio, Mexico's agricultural heartland, through northern Chihuahua, before turning east into Ontario and Quebec. No U.S. checkpoints, no customs bottlenecks, no 17% tariff. The system is a marvel of cold chain logistics. Refrigerated containers, insulated and pressure-controlled, keep produce locked at a perfect 1 degree Celsius to plus 1 degree Celsius for the entire 2,000 kilometers trip. That means 4 to 5 extra days of shelf life, fewer spoiled loads, and cheaper transport overall. According to Canadian Pacific Kansas City, CPKC, the route cuts logistics costs by 15% compared to trucking through the U.S. While Washington taxed the tomato, Mexico perfected its delivery. What started as a workaround quickly became a long-term play. Major Canadian grocery giants, including Loblaws and Metro, didn't just tour farms in Mexico, they signed multi-year supply contracts. By bypassing the U.S., Canadian buyers now secure steady shipments at stable prices, while American buyers face shortages and inflated costs. In the end, the tariff didn't stop Mexican tomatoes. It just changed their destination. And now, the question is whether U.S. policy protected farmers or pushed an entire market into someone else's hands. The deals weren't short-term fixes. They were 5-year commitments. And with every refrigerated container rolling into Canada, the message was unmistakable. Mexico wasn't turning back. There was no grand press conference in Mexico City, no fiery statement from the president, no clever social media campaign. Just train after train of perfectly chilled produce crossing into new territory. A senior Canadian trade advisor put it bluntly, they didn't fight the tariff, they outgrew it. That's what makes the shift sting for Washington. It wasn't just tomatoes that moved, it was trust. Buyers who once depended on Texas distribution hubs are now pouring money into cold storage facilities in Montreal and Toronto. Ports that fed California and Arizona markets are seeing fewer shipments, fewer contracts, fewer reasons to expand. Meanwhile, in U.S. farming towns, the change isn't greeted with outrage so much as quiet disbelief. There was no televised trade battle, no all-night negotiations, no last-minute rescue deal. Mexico didn't leap over the tariff wall. It quietly tunneled under it, building a route that may now be permanent. Bloomberg Green reports that by 2026, nearly half of Mexico's fresh tomato exports will go to Canada, a staggering jump from under 1% just 2 years ago. And the shift isn't stopping at tomatoes. Strawberries, avocados, and bell peppers are following the same northern track. The U.S. chose tariffs. Canada chose appointments, not with diplomats, but directly with growers. And while American officials debate policy, Canadian store shelves are filling with fresh produce at stable prices. Sometimes trade wars aren't won with speeches or sanctions. Sometimes they're won with schedules, signatures, and a railway timetable that never stops running. Don't let quiet policy shifts decide your grocery bill. Share this, drop your thoughts below, and subscribe so you know the truth before the next big change hits your plate.